And good evening to you people. Yes, it is I, me, little old me, Martin Farrell. It's Friday evening, it's 9 o'clock, well it's 6 minutes past 9, and this is Let's Talk Indeed on streaming live on People's Internet Radio and we're seeking solutions. What can I say about Andy's show? He does it every week. Absolutely brilliant show, Andy and guests Jason and Lennon. I have to ask Andy, was he hooked up to oxygen or something for that interview? He didn't stop to even take a breath. But it was a great show, Andy, again, and thanks for that. I hope I have a good show this evening. I have Rick Simpson lined up, I have Yvonne lined up, I have two ladies from England lined up, Sarah and Beccy, lined up for the second half. I broke the show up this evening because I think Sarah has a lot to say of a walk she does in Spain with hemp oil. So that's why I broke it up, because I'd like to hear a little bit more about Sarah on that on the second half. But just to say a few laughable things that happened to me this week. One of them was for Luby Lou in the chat, if she's still there. I think she is. You'll get a laugh out of this, Luby. And the first thing is, I'd like to say, I noticed a thing last night. Myself and Graham Hart was indeed across the water last night. We were on American Freedom Radio. And we had an enjoyable time. It was great. The interview was very good. But when I was looking for the stream for the radio, first of all, I said, look, I'm here. So I might as well join the station. So hey, I joined the station. So I go into the chat box, say hi guys. Everybody say hi. iSpan, I had to put my was my name in the chat, iSpan. But I said, hi Chuck, it's Martin here. Yeah, grand Martin, blah blah blah. And then about 10 seconds after that I tried to put something else in. And it came back with the funniest thing ever, because I just thought of all you guys in our chat here. I forget exactly what it said, but it either said I was banned. No, it did say I was banned for 15 minutes from the chat. And the reason behind it was because I didn't say something meaning, or I said something meaningless, which I thought was hilarious. Imagine that on our chat here, guys. There'd be nobody on it. We'd all be banned. We'd all be fucking banned. But anyway, I thought that was hilarious. I just see Graham Hart in the chat there as well. Hi, Graham. And welcome to all you guys in the chat as well. Another thing that happened to me, this was Luby as well. A couple of years back, my doctor retired. So a new doctor, I didn't know, took over his position. So I was going to this doctor, I was getting a prescription filled every week, and all of a sudden he wanted to see me. But hey, I didn't want to see him. Why would I want to see him for? There's nothing wrong with me. I just want my prescription filled. And this went on for a while, so he sacked me. He sacked me as a client. He sacked me. He got rid of me. He said, look, I don't want to be a doctor anymore. That was it. So I had to go and find a new doctor, which I did. So I found this new practice. Everything was going grand. Last month I went in to get my prescription filled, and there was a little note. There was no prescription, but there was a little note. And it said, we cannot give you a prescription today because the doctor wants to see you. And I said, right, I don't want to see the doctor. There's nothing wrong with me. And, well, we just can't do this, you know. I'll explain in a second, right? But I ended up getting my prescription anyway, because I made an appointment to see a doctor. So they gave me a prescription. But sure enough, I didn't go to see the doctor because there's nothing wrong with me. So that was a month ago. So the other day I went in to collect my prescription as normal. And there's a note there again. And it states, we cannot fill your prescription unless you see the doctor. So I'm looking at the secretary. And I said, that's no problem. So I have no prescription. No, we can't give you a prescription without seeing the doctor. Says I, that is not a problem at all. Says I, can you pin a little note to that note and just say that I'm not opposed to stop taking this pill for any reason. So if I don't get my prescription today and anything happens to me in the next 24 hours, I'll be holding this practice personally responsible. And I went to walk out the door. And with that, the secretary calls me like, oh, no, Mr. Farrell, hold on. We saw something out now. And She rushes into the doctor, and she comes back out and she says, okay, the doctor will see you in about 2 minutes. And I'm sitting there. Okay, hey ho, why not? I'm here. Why not? So I go in to see the doctor. And I'm sitting down with the doctor, he's looking at me, and he says, what can I do for you today? And I said to him, hold on a minute, I only come in here to collect a prescription. I don't want to see you. There's nothing wrong with me. Just give me my prescription and I'll go. See, but people don't understand. Every time you see a doctor, they're making money off you. As Luby said a couple of weeks ago. That's what it's all about. It's all about money and funding and the like, you know. But anyway, whilst I was there, I said, I seen the blood pressure unit thing, and I said, look, whilst I'm here, you might as well take my blood pressure. And I said, by the way, so whether it's high or even low, that doesn't mean I'm sick or I need a tablet for it. And he kind of agreed with me on that one, which was amazing. He said, yeah, I understand that because some people were not all made the same, he said. So that was fun. That was a laughable outing. But anyway, back to this evening's show. I'm coming back now after this with Rick Simpson, if I can find him, and Yvonne, which I believe is very nervous. And there's no need to be nervous, Yvonne. You're just talking to me and probably 200 million people listening in, but there's no need to be nervous. So I'm going to play this tune. I'm going to get my first two guests up, and I'll be back after this, folks. And we're back in the room, guys. Welcome back. I'm Martin Farrell, and I'm back here with my first two guests of the evening. Yvonne, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Hi, Martin.
How are you doing, Yvonne? I think everybody knows Yvonne in the chat room because she goes by our avatar as Babushka. So there you go, Yvonne. Everybody knows who you are now, you see.
Thank you.
And I have Rick Simpson as well. Rick, are you there?
Oh, yes, I'm here, brother, and happy to be with you.
I'm glad you're alive, Rick. That's the first thing I'd like to say to you.
I've been hearing these rumors about me being dead again. This is the fourth or fifth time this has happened.
Well, I'm talking to a dead man, so...
Yeah. We're having a seance.
I don't know how these rumors get started, but it's just totally ridiculous.
It's fun. It's fun. I'm going to start with you first, Rick. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, what you're getting up to these days, and blah, blah. A little bit about yourself.
Over the last few years, I've been spending a lot of time in Europe, traveling from country to country, doing lectures and interviews and spreading the word about the healing powers of extracts that can be produced in the cannabis hemp plant. But this all happened, how I got onto this whole thing. In 1972, I watched my cousin die a horrible death at the age of 25. I was about 23 at the time, and he was the first person I ever knew that ever had cancer, and he was the first person I ever knew that died from it. Yeah. So actually, at that time, cancer was still quite rare. But about 3 years later, I was leaving work one day. I worked at a hospital. And when I was pulling out of the driveway, this report came on the radio. And, of course, the announcer was laughing like an idiot. But I don't know. They always have to make a joke when they say that, stupid word, marijuana. Why don't we just call this plant what it is, cannabis? But anyway, he stated that this study in the U.S. had found that THC, the active ingredient in marijuana, had been found to kill cancer cells. So I didn't really think too much about it. I just thought it was somebody's idea of a sick joke or something.
Yeah.
But it stuck in my memory because of my cousin's death. And then many years later, in 1997, I suffered a severe head injury at work. It left me with a condition called post-concussion syndrome. My head was ringing 24 hours a day, extremely loud noise. It was driving my blood pressure crazy. I had many problems like balance issues and things of that nature. So where I worked in a hospital, I went with the medical system. And I took their, all of their pills and everything. But about a year after I was injured, in late 1998, I watched an episode of The Nature of Things with Dr. David Suzuki. And this episode was called Reefer Madness 2. But it was showing people that were smoking cannabis, for many serious medical problems, and they were having great results. So, I had smoked cannabis before that, but I'd never looked at cannabis as a medicine. So I went out, and I didn't have any cannabis, so I got some from a friend I knew. And when I smoked it, sure enough, it worked better than anything the medical system was providing. But when I went to the doctors and asked for a prescription, because at that time we had the medical marijuana access program was going in Canada. But when I asked these doctors for a prescription, they all said the same thing. It's still under study. It's bad for the lungs and, nothing but rubbish. But at the time, I tended to believe the doctors. But the pills they were giving me, like by the 1999, I was literally becoming suicidal, because of the effects of these medications that the doctors were providing. So I was getting very desperate, and so I decided, I thought, well, what would happen? I knew that smoking cannabis would help me more than just smoking the cannabis would help me more than the pills. So I thought about, what would happen if you wash these extracts off the bud material, with a solvent, and then filter the bud oil or the solvent oil mix, filter it, and then boil the solvent off. What would you have?
Yeah.
So I went to my doctor's office one day in '99, and I asked him this. I said, what would you think if I produced the essential oil from that plant and ingested it as opposed to smoking it? And he gave me a really funny look when I come out with that one. But he did admit, he said this would be a more medicinal way to use this plant. But they still wouldn't give me a prescription. So I'm ashamed to say it. I made the oil in 1999 when I made the first oil. But I was afraid to use it because, I didn't know what else it would do to me. I knew it would be sedative, but I wasn't sure, I had no experience with this, no medical background. So it was almost 3 years later. The doctor called me to his office, and I went in, and he said, well, we've tried everything there is, on you, and nothing's worked, so you're on your own. So again, I asked him for a prescription for cannabis, but again, I was refused. So anyway, I went home and I started ingesting these extracts. And when the medical system cut me loose in 2001, the effect of these pills they'd done so much damage. I couldn't hardly even remember my own name. That's the effects these horrible medications have.
Yeah.
But when I got on this oil and I started with little tiny doses, and within 3 to 4 weeks, I was taking a quarter of a gram or a third of a gram at night for about an hour before bed. But the improvement, as soon as I started taking the oil, I started getting the sleep I needed. And it controlled my blood pressure. My arthritis in my knees disappeared. I started losing all this weight. I lost about 40 pounds because I used to be much heavier. But the oil just brought me right back to the weight that I should be. And it all happened within about a month and a half. And I've seen several patients that lost over 100 pounds just when they were taking this oil. But anyway, it did so many things for my health. It was just amazing. People seen me coming back again. I was, getting back to good health. And then about a year later, in late 2002, I went into the doctor's office to see about these 3 areas I'd had since the 1990s. And these were little open lesions that wouldn't heal. I had one on my right side of my nose, close to my eye. I had one on my cheek, and I had one on my chest. So when the doctor looked at it, he said, well, it looks like skin cancer. But he said, we won't know until we have a pathology report. So they sent me in to have the one removed that was close to my eye first, because that's the one they were most concerned about. And then he said, we'll do the other 2 areas at a later date. So I go in and I had the operation, truly an unpleasant experience. And after about a week after the operation, I was home. And I got one of these magnified mirrors, and I was looking at where they had operated. And, of course, it was infected, which is pretty standard today in hospitals. But it was right at that moment that report I'd heard almost 30 years before popped back into my mind. THC, the active ingredient. And I knew that these oils that I had been ingesting were full of THC. Yeah. So I hate to say it, but I almost didn't try it because I thought, well, if this really worked, of course, our medical systems would be using it, wouldn't they? Our governments would be, bringing it and legalizing it. But anyway, I didn't know really what to do, so I decided, well, I'll just put a little bit of this oil on the skin cancer that was on my cheek and the one that was on my chest. And I put just a drop of oil on each one, and I put a little bandage on them. And I left it in place for about 3 or 4 days. I didn't feel a thing. There was no pain. I didn't think anything was really happening. So 4 days later, I go down and I remove the bandages, and both areas completely healed, just pink skin. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. So I started telling friends and neighbors, about what I'd witnessed, and I told them, I said, I think it's the oil from the cannabis plant that did this. And of course, the minute I said that, yeah, right, Rick, marijuana cures cancer. You're crazy.
Yeah.
That's the normal thing. 7 weeks later, that the cancer actually came roaring right back. The one that they had surgically removed, it came right back. So I just took a drop of oil, put it on, put a bandage on. 4 days later, I removed it. Now that's over 12 and a half years ago. I've never had to retreat these areas. So I went down to my doctor's office. I got a copy of my pathology report, which stated that I had basal cell carcinoma. And of course it said, totally excised. They always say that, don't they? If it was totally excised, why did it come right back? But anyway, so I didn't really, I didn't know what to do with this. So I just started, after I went and got the pathology report, the doctor's wife, she was the receptionist. So I just told her, I said, I would like to come back in the evening and talk to the doctor about something I've been working on. And she said, well, what's this about? And I said, well, it's about that skin cancer I had. And I said, the area that they had surgically removed, it came right back. So I cured it, and I cured the other 2 areas using hemp oil. Well, the minute I said hemp oil, the woman just went rigid. The doctor will not go there. The doctor will not prescribe this. And there was 5 or 6 people in the waiting room. This woman was literally screaming at me. So I thought, she'd gone off the deep end. But I went home, and on the way home that day, I got thinking about it, and I thought, well, if I was a doctor and any patient of mine had cured themselves with any form of cancer using natural means, I'd want to know about it. Why didn't they?
Yeah, I have to say, Rick, we had a lady on here, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, talking to Laurie, exactly about the same thing you're talking about, and that's what she used, and it worked.
Yeah.
And actually, Laurie says hello, by the way. She's in Scotland.
Oh,
she's talking
wonderful. There's no medicine like this. But
is it a cure-all, Rick?
Pardon me?
Is it a cure-all?
Oh, if you take different varieties of good indica strains and make these extracts properly, and then mix these different extracts together, literally, yes, it's a cure-all. It can work in practically any disease known to man. And it basically cuts out the use of practically all pharmaceuticals, and that's what they're so afraid of.
Right. And this, would you rub it on your skin for some ailments, or just ingest it for other ailments? Or?
Well, ingesting is when the real magic happens. I mean, you can treat external skin conditions like psoriasis, diabetic ulcers that won't heal. This will heal a diabetic ulcer in no time. Third-degree burns. It heals third-degree burns very, very quickly, leaving no scars. It takes the pain away. As soon as you put the oil on, within 2-3 minutes, there's no more pain, no more burning sensation. It works, on AIDS, multiple sclerosis. It seems like all forms of cancer, arthritis, chronic pain. It just goes on and on and on.
I have a couple of questions here. One from James. He said, would it work on hemorrhoids?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Just take a drop of that. And I had a gentleman in Canada that was against this, and he finally did come to me, and he had hemorrhoids, and we didn't really like each other much, but so he came and he asked me about this, and I just told him, I said, just go home. I gave him some oil, and I said, go home, put some on your finger, and I said, do I got to tell you where to shove it? So he left the house, and he was really in a huff. He slammed the door and everything. But about a few weeks later, I was in Amherst, and I met him in a parking lot. And he walked up to me, and he put his finger up. He had his finger up, just one finger, and he said, 1 dose. 1 dose of that oil. He said, I've been bleeding from the ass for 20 years. He said, 1 dose of that oil, that was it. It was gone.
Wow.
It's just beyond belief. I mean, this oil can even stop a toothache, for God's sake.
Yeah, I've just another question here, Rick, before we get on to Yvonne. Question, would there be a good prognosis for a 5-year-old child who has gone through proton beam therapy and is now with chemotherapy?
Well, I would suggest that anyone that's taking chemo get off it as fast as possible.
Yeah,
I mean, we all know the results of that. Chemo and radiation are cancer-causing treatments. And as far as any of this business about, it being bad for your children, to me, that's a bunch of nonsense. The Jamaica study that was done in the 1980s by Melanie Dreher, she went out to prove where the healthiest babies on the planet were born. Well, they're born in Jamaica to mothers who use cannabis a great deal. So if cannabis does not harm the baby in the developmental stages in the womb, why would it harm a child of any age? And now many children worldwide are using this and different forms of it, high CBD oils and things. But I still believe that, it's the synergetic effect of all these different cannabinoids working together. That's what creates these wonderful healing abilities. And if you're treating cancer or many of these serious illnesses, high THC levels, I think, are much preferable. You build up a tolerance to these oils very quickly, and in a short time, you can take large doses of it, and people around you don't even know that you're taking it. So I think it's the most sensible thing you can do to treat anyone of any age. And I know if it was my children, I would make sure that they didn't have any vaccinations or anything of that nature. If I wanted to protect my children, all I have to do is give them the oil. That gives them the best protection they could possibly have. Yeah,
just like to say, are you still making the oil? Because I remember the first time I seen one of your pods was a good few years ago, and you were showing how to make it.
Well, yes. Well, I made a great deal of oil from 2003 to 2009, but after 2009, well, the corruption of the Canadian government basically forced me to stay in Europe. So since that time, I've been traveling from country to country, but you see, you can only stay for 30 days or 3 months. So that really doesn't even give me enough time to grow a crop. And on top of that, in most countries, it's illegal. So I really haven't been able to grow or supply oil to anyone since 2009. As a matter of fact, I often don't have the oil myself. So that's the situation I'm in.
Just one more question here from Mahat. He says, does Rick think it's justifiable to charge lots of money for CBD oil, and is it better to use THC hemp oil?
Well, I think what's going on with the CBD oil is nothing but a racket. I've heard that they're selling it for as much as $200 a gram, and that's nothing but highway robbery. I mean, the CBD, that's more or less, you're talking about industrial hemp. Hemp, because THC is what people on the street are looking for. But I've always said, I've never met a cannabinoid I didn't like. And certainly I cannot say that CBD does not have its healing abilities. It does. But if you overlook the THC, I think you're making a vast mistake. Yeah. Because the THC causes you to get high, yes, but it also causes you to get healed. I mean, THC is the cancer killer. So, people are so misinformed about this subject, but in my view, I think all these oils should contain a great deal of THC, and and like I said, the other cannabinoids.
Yeah, I think at this stage, if she's still there, Yvonne, can you join us?
Yeah, I'm still here.
How's things, chicken?
I'm fine. Hello, Rick, darling.
Hello, Yvonne.
Can you tell us, Yvonne, how you found Rick and how you ended up sitting on his truck, so to speak?
Well, basically, I have Charcot-Marie tooth, which affects the peripheral nerves.
Can you higher your mic a little bit, Yvonne, please?
Sorry.
There you go.
Okay, is that any better?
That's perfect.
Yeah, as I was saying, I have Charcot-Marie tooth, rhesus levi neuropathy, spondylitis, scoliosis, and arthritis. And I'm lucky because I can't take conventional pharmaceutical painkillers. Right. So for many years I've been treating myself with cannabis, whether it's been the eating it, drinking it, smoking it. But one day it was quite bizarre because I used to go to the David Icke chat forums way back. And I was telling people I'd seen this video of Rick Simpson about the hemp oil. And we were chatting. And a few days later, some chap pops in called United Hemp, Mark, who happens to be a neighbour and a friend of Rick's. And he's like, oh, come over, So being a cheeky scouser, I went over to Mark's and met up with Rick. And every day, Rick gave me the oil. It was free of charge. It cost me nothing at all. He freely gave me this stuff. And but when I first had it, it felt like every joint in my body had been oiled. One day, I'd cooked a roast dinner, and it was quite bizarre because the cook had decided to have a fit, and I blew a few fuses, and I only ended up with one ring working and a mini roast oven. I'm trying to cook this roast dinner. Obviously, it was going to take a lot longer, and by the time I'd finished it, I'd realised I wasn't in the pain that I'm usually in. I feel as though my back is breaking whenever I cook a dinner. And it was amazing. And I felt it was good, for sleep. It was good for everything. And I also use cannabis as an antidepressant. And now some people mightn't believe that, but many years ago I was given Valium, only took it for a few days, and it was horrendous. And I thought, no, I'd rather carry on with the cannabis, hence, treating it as an antidepressant, a painkiller, and it helps me sleep. And I think it's criminal that, they'd rather pump out these pharmaceutical drugs that has all sorts of side effects.
Yeah.
Rather than allowing me to dictate what I can put into my body. I've had cannabis now since I was 14. I'm 52. I have no criminal record. I'm not a horrible person. I've never given anyone hemp. That's not being tuned into it or whatever. I class myself as responsible. So who is the system to say, no, you can't take it. I am law. I am God.
Well, I think we already know the system knows that this oil can cure. That's why it's not been allowed out there, because the pharmaceutical companies and the like would lose absolutely billions. But getting back to your case, Yvonne, when you did go over to Mark and Rick, you were cured when you were over there, basically.
It aided. Well, it stopped me pain. It stopped all my pains. Like, as people know, it's very hard to get the oil, especially on the Isle of Wight. So the best way I can take it is in cake. And when I make cake, it's green. That's how much I put into it. And it's not as good as the oil. The oil is a lot better to take.
Yeah.
It won't change the defects of my feet, the shape of them. They're deformed forever now. But when it comes to my arthritis, my scoliosis, spondylitis, CMT, life's different with the oil. How people's lives can be improved by just being allowed to take the oil. People wouldn't be as disabled as they are.
Well, I have to say, and Rick's listening as well, after the show I will definitely be seeking out some of this oil. Definitely. But
it's the best thing you can do for your body, brother.
Definitely.
I have a question here for you, Rick. If I can find it again. Oh. Yeah, a question from Dell in the chat box. It says, does THC treat the symptoms or the cause?
No, it doesn't just treat the symptoms. A tumor is actually a symptom of an underlying reason, that's allowing this tumor to grow. So when you're ingesting these massive doses that I recommend, these extracts, it's not only treating the tumors, it's actually treating the underlying cause that's allowing the tumors to grow. So it truly is a cure. There's no question. As I said, I cured my own cancer with this over 12 years ago. And they had this stupid 5-year limit. If you live 5 years, and it was a cure, even if you died the next day. But, using this natural extract, I've been cured now of cancer for over 12 years. So I think I have every right to say that cannabis cured my cancer. And now it's cured the cancers of so many worldwide, and not just cancer, but so many other diseases. So really, this is the ultimate medicine. It's perfectly safe. It's non-addictive. There's no danger here. You can't even overdose on this. If you overdose, what you're going to do is you're going to sleep. It's not going to kill you. And when you wake up, you'll be fine. So, as long as the oil is made from these heavy sedative indica strains is what I recommend. The sativa strains are much, I don't use sativas for internal use because they're so energizing. Sleep and rest are part of the healing process. And that's what these oils from the sedative indica strains, that's what they promote, sleep and rest. But the sativas, literally, I've talked to patients that have tried to use sativa oils, by ingesting them, and they said, some of them even told me that they felt like they were going to die. It was the effects were so energizing, and they couldn't it interrupted their sleep patterns, so they couldn't sleep properly. So, sativas, oils and extracts from sativas are okay for external conditions, like skin conditions.
Yeah.
But if you're going to ingest the oils, the name of the game is extracts produced from the heavy, sleepy, sedative indica strains. That's what you need for internal use.
Just getting back to Yvonne there for a second. You said, Yvonne, you use it as an antidepressant.
Yes, sorry about the telephone. I thought I unplugged it. Yeah, I use it as an antidepressant.
Now, the studies, they put out, I'll say they in inverted commas, they put out studies across the world saying that it causes depression.
I think there's a very small majority of people who wouldn't be able to take hemp. But then there's a majority of people who cannot take peanuts, eggs, whatever. There will always be someone in the world who will be allergic to something. And that's the way I look at it.
Well, I mean, look at penicillin. I had two.
Yeah.
Now, penicillin was supposed to be the great lifesaver, but yet I knew two people back home that died. And one of them died both of them died right in the hospitals because they were given penicillin and they were allergic to it.
Well, look how many people die through pharmaceutical drugs.
Well, I think the pharmaceutical industry, and they go on about the death rates of all these different diseases and everything, but I think if you combine them all, that the greatest killer on this planet is truly the pharmaceutical industry. There's a gentleman by the name of James Corbett from Canada. He puts out a thing on the internet called the Corbett Report. If you go to episode 286 of the Corbett Report, it's called Rockefeller Medicine. And if you watch that report, it tells you exactly why we have the rotten medical system we have today. This whole thing was rigged. And James Corbett did a wonderful job exposing it. So here's a tip of the hat to him.
I do. I enjoy watching James Corbett, Rick. I have another question for you, actually, Rick. They're coming in thick and fast. He said, could you ask Rick what would be the best strain method for severe nerve muscle pain?
Well, again, I can't really tell people. I get questions like that all the time. What strain should I use? But at the present time, there's no stability in the seed industry. There's dozens or hundreds of different companies now producing cannabis seeds, and I was a grower and I was a breeder, so I bred a lot of my own strains. But if you went to one strain I used in Canada was called White Widow. And the particular variety of White Widow that I had, it was very sedative, so it had the traits of an indica, and it was a wonderful painkiller. It was some of the best pain-killing medication I've ever seen. It would kill pain that hydromorphine wouldn't even touch. Yeah. But almost all the seed companies sell White Widow. So if you sent to 5 different companies and ordered the White Widow strain, and then you grew them, you would probably find that you're growing 5 different strains with different medical values. And here in Europe, what I've seen, for the most part, the White Widow in Europe has much more sativa in it. So it's more energizing. So I don't it's impossible for me to recommend to people. The only thing I can tell them is simply look for a strain that's around 20% THC or more. And there's many of these strains available now. There's some strains out there like Pineapple Kush, LA Confidential. These strains are indicas, and they're up in around the 26% THC range. And these should make wonderful medications. And like I said, if you take too much of it, yes, you can get high, but it's harmless. This is what I always tell people, when you start this medication, it's going to make you sleep a great deal. So about an hour after you take your dose, the oil is going to be telling you to go lay down. And I tell people, don't fight the sleepy effects. Just go lay down and go with it. Enjoy the ride. It's not going to harm you.
Yeah.
You know, but some people will get anxious. They'll try to fight that sleepy feeling, and they're actually just doing this to themselves. If they would just relax and go with it, they'd have no problems at all.
I have another question here for you, Rick, from Dell again. It says, does Rick agree that the body exhibits symptoms of a troubled mind, such as unresolved issues? Therefore, does the oil just calm the mind, allowing the body time to heal?
Well, the oil calms the mind. It's like I said, it gives you the sleep and rest you need. But I mean, many people that have been through traumatic experiences, like all these soldiers that are returning, to North America now, post-traumatic stress syndrome. Well, these people are having wonderful results with the use of these extracts. Because it's healing them and it's letting them deal with what they witnessed. I've even had people that were actually inmates of Hitler's death camps who couldn't communicate with their own children because of the traumatic experience they had gone through. And once they get on these oils, they can begin to deal with the past. So it's really, it works in so many ways. It's like Yvonne said, often people are suffering from depression because they're sick. So when you begin curing their disease, the depression just goes away. And I found it so useful, like through what I went through, with the court systems and everything in Canada, the oil kept me level. Like the ups and downs, like one day, patients would be coming and saying, oh, I'm cured of my terminal cancer, and then next day there'd be a police officer at my door wanting to arrest me. So it was all ups and downs. Yeah. It was a true horror story. But with the oil, it just made it so I could deal with it all.
Speaking,
and it was so much. This medication is, you can't even compare it to pharmaceuticals.
Speaking of the Royal Constabulary over there in Canada, can you explain to the people what they done when you went on holidays one time?
When I went to what?
When you left your home, you went on holidays and they broke into your home.
The Freedom Fighters Award.
Yeah,
yes.
I was raided several times. I was raided in 2003, 2005, 2006, and then again in 2009 when I was attending the Cannabis Cup in Amsterdam. They had called me there to do a lecture, and they made me Freedom Fighter of the Year. But the day before I was given this honor, I got a call from Canada that my house had been raided. And I couldn't believe it, because I'd been through their stupid court system, and I seen all the corruption there. But what they did, I think at the government's request, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police went in there, staged a raid. They tried to say that they found 70 pounds of cannabis in my home. Now, my home had been broke into in 2001 and 2007. Now, would I go to Europe for a week and leave 70 pounds of cannabis in my home? Not likely.
Yeah.
And, they said they found restricted weapons and booby traps. Well, the only weapon, or it wasn't even a weapon, the only thing in my house when I left was a child's pellet gun, which is something any 10-year-old can buy freely in any hardware store. So it was all trumped up charges, and they were trying to make me sound like Dr. Evil, to the public. And I think I think they believed that, if they did this, that would keep me out of Canada. And, because I was getting a lot of support in Canada. And I was becoming a real thorn in the government's backside, and they kept refusing to do anything about this. So I think they dreamt all this up just to keep me out of Canada. And it did. But what happened then, I just started going from country to country, giving lectures and telling the whole world the truth about this. And now that truth is spread everywhere, and, countless people now. I'd say it would have to be well up in the millions now of people that have been using these extracts, and they know the healing power of it. So there's no holding it back. The beauty of it is this is a medicine that any of us there's a plant that any of us can grow, and any of us can produce these medications ourselves. Yeah. It's so simple. It's really no harder than making a cup of coffee.
Well, I think I think it's getting out there the information about the oil, because this is my second show on it, and I really do think the information is getting out there. But I have another question here for you, Rick. You're very popular here this evening in the chat room.
Okay.
It's from Tony Host, and he says, what can Rick tell us about the GMO company's involvement with the seed industry i.e. auto-flowering and what's that?
Well, first
Feminist
off, I'm
varieties.
a believer. Well, first off, I'm a believer in doing everything the old way, with the seeds and everything. This auto-flowering and all that, well, it's, for some people, I guess they do have benefits with it. But this genetic modification thing, I can't say for sure, but I've heard reports that Uruguay Monsanto is involved in Uruguay, and they're supplying genetically modified cannabis seeds there. And I've actually heard rumors that a couple different seed companies are starting to supply them. I am totally against the genetic modification of anything. This is a horror story that's spread worldwide now. And, a lot of people are catching on to the fact that, they finally got it in their heads that this genetic modification is really not safe. It's doing a great deal of harm to our health. So I think that, I think we should just shut down companies like Monsanto and what they're doing because, they're poisoning our earth, they're killing us. It's just not right.
Absolutely.
Can I say something about the GMO? I think GMO cannabis should be avoided at all costs. I've been to America a few times and I've had medical marijuana from different people, and I've had homegrown marijuana, and the difference in them both. I'm not saying all the medical marijuana was GMO, but I could swear, that some of them were GMO, and they weren't good for the head, for sure, and wasn't good for the body. It's not right. It affects you totally differently. So, as I say, I think it should be avoided.
Well, I think all GMO crops should be avoided.
Exactly.
Yvonne,
exactly. Well, if it's bad in the food, then it's bad in the seed. It's common sense.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, they're doing so much harm to us in so many ways today. Like all of these chemtrails and things like that. I laughed at a politician here. I talked to one here just recently in Croatia, and I mentioned chemtrails, and she said, "Oh, there's no such thing." And I looked at her. I said, "Lady, don't you ever look up?" Because they're over Zagreb all the time, and she still, said, "Well, no, there's no such thing." And I said, "Well, why? If there's no such thing, why did the United Nations here over a year ago openly admit that they're spraying these chemicals into the air over populated centers?" And this is done by private companies. It's definitely happening. Well, why is it happening? They're saying it's about weather modification. I think it's maybe a little bit more about extermination. Everything about our world today is harming our immune systems. Yeah. We're living in a poisoned world. And when we have our immune systems compromised, our bodies actually create natural cannabinoids themselves. If we're healthy and we're living in a healthy environment, but when your immune system becomes compromised, it can't produce enough of the natural cannabinoids themselves, to fight back diseases like cancer. That's when, these extracts from the cannabis plant come into play, because when these molecules, if they're decarboxylated properly, the molecules in the cannabinoids, they fit right into our CB1 and CB2 receptors of the endocannabinoid system. And, basically the endocannabinoid system regulates everything in our bodies, including our immune systems. So this is, one of the biggest reasons. This is why, like all animal life, we all have cats, dogs, bears, no matter what. They all have an endocannabinoid system. So this medicine is very effective in the treatment of all animal life, including humans.
Yeah, just a question just came in mind there, Rick. If you're healthy, how can I phrase this? Would it clean your system out?
Oh, this is what I recommend. If you have terminal cancer or whatever, and you haven't taken any chemo, like usually 60 grams over 90 days is enough to heal your cancer. If you've taken chemo and radiation, then you better make that total around 180 grams or 180 milliliters of oil as quickly as you can take it, because you have to undo all of that damage that the chemo left behind. And this is the best way to do it. I'm sorry, what was that? I got a little off there. What was that question again?
No, just about cleaning your system. But,
yes. Well, this is something, I always recommend to people, I don't care who you are, if you live in a poisoned environment, I mean, our bodies are full of heavy metals and toxins. We need to be detoxified. And this is what these oils do. When you take these oils, you'll bring you back to a healthy weight, and at the same time, it's taking all the toxins out of your body. So I would strongly recommend that anybody, even if you think you're in a state of good health, you're really not, because your body does have these toxins. And I would strongly suggest that I think it's a good idea that anyone takes a full 60-gram treatment to bring themselves, detoxify themselves, and bring themselves back to a state of basically perfect health. And then afterwards, they can just continue to take a drop at night, before an hour or so before bedtime. Yeah. And this is enough. It's just a maintenance dose, which would total 1 to 2 grams of oil a month. And that protects you from cancers, all kinds of, conditions.
So you're literally talking a very small amount of oil.
Oh, yes. I mean, for a maintenance dose or for something like that, you're only looking at, like I said, a drop at night. Yeah. If you want to take a little bit more, that's up to you, because this is harmless. There's no addiction. There's no danger. If you take a little too much, well, like I said, you'll sleep a little longer. That's all. That's not a bad thing.
I have another question for you, Rick, and it comes from Tony Hurst. It says, what does Rick think about juicing raw cannabis?
Well, there's a Dr. Courtney in the U.S. that goes on about that all the time, but I'm in total disagreement with it. First off, cannabis is a plant that detoxifies the soil it's planted in. Now, I assume that those toxins go up into the plant. And also, it's rare to find a kilo or a pound of good bud that doesn't have at least some mold or mildew in it, and usually some tiny little insects to boot. So when you put all that into a juicing machine, you got mold, mildew, toxins, little bugs, and all the rest of it. And the other trouble is there's no decarboxylation process. There's no heating process involved with juicing. So the molecules in the cannabinoids are not rotated to the delta 9 position, which is the most active medical position. So I'm totally against juicing of the cannabis plant.
Right. Okay, Tony, you heard it here first. I'll tell you what I'm going to do now, Rick and Yvonne, and I hope you stay with me, guys. We're going to take a wee break, as we call it around here, and I'm going to bring in Sarah, and hopefully our friend Beccy is there. Sarah is doing wonderful work with the oil, Rick, in Spain, and I hope she'll explain more on that after this small break, and we'll be back after this, folks. And you're very welcome back to Let's Talk with Martin Farrell. I'm here with my guests Rick Simpson and the wonderful Yvonne, and I'm also joined now by Sarah and Beccy. How are you guys? Sarah, are you there?
I'm good, I'm here. I'm good, thank you, Martin.
I was explaining before the break about the work you're doing with cannabis oil, Beccy. And can you explain exactly to the people that's listening in what you do? And you're only home from Spain, I believe, as well, are you?
Yeah, well, I'm back in England. I was in Spain. I come back from Spain yesterday. Yeah, I was visiting there. We was actually working with Rick for a little while on this, actually, to start off with. We started a good few years ago, and we've just gone from strength to strength, really, actually. And we've been working with quite a few different people now with quite a few different illnesses. We've been having some great results, and we've just been going from strength to strength, really, and discovering more and more amazing things about this amazing plant as time goes by, really. So, yeah, and Beccy, she does, she's quite a big campaigner in the UK. She does a lot of campaign work. And
yeah.
Which is not huge, but does a lot of campaign work and everything. So and I've been working very closely with Beccy recently as well, for other things.
Yeah, good stuff. Can you tell us what you do in Spain when you do travel over that way?
Well, I'm sort of what people refer to as a caregiver. So if people come and take cannabis oil, then I guide them through it. I've got a degree in biology, so I sort of research their condition. I research how cannabis oil can help, and I also research other things that can help, and I share my research with people, and they decide whether they're going to follow it or not, or the recommendations that I do. And I've also been doing a lot of work with hair analysis as well, especially looking at people with heavy metal in their systems. And some people, I've been coming across quite a few people with a lot of arsenic in their system, but not enough. I haven't got a big enough pool of people to actually write a paper or anything on, or add to the scientific community just yet. but we're getting some great results with gathering for our research. We're at the primary research gathering stage. That's one of our focuses, to get a lot of information so that we can share it, really, what we're finding with people and what works with cannabis oil and what necessarily doesn't work with cannabis oil, because not everybody is suited to cannabis oil. So we find ways of working around that as well. Like things like using suppositories, so people don't actually have to deal with the high. Because I've heard of horrendous stories of people taking too much cannabis too quickly and things like this. It can cause major problems for people. People can end up in the hospital in panic attacks, and so this plant needs to be respected, and and it's about getting that information about respecting that plant and using it in the correct manners, in the correct dosing at the correct rate, really, for each individual. Really, I've found. Treating everyone like an individual is really important as well.
These panic attacks you're speaking of, though, I think they're usually more associated with the sativa strains, and
they are associated with the sativa strains, but also high dosages. I've heard of people taking 0.5 gram at a time. And cannabis is a trachycardia, so it does cause the heart to speed up. So. And detoxification can happen quite fast for people as well. So offering that extra support sometimes can be really beneficial for people. People can go into detoxification a bit too fast for their body to be able to keep up. So, knowing these little things can make people's journeys, I've found, a lot easier and a lot more of an easier ride and a lot more comfortable, and the healing process a lot more enjoyable. And that's really what a lot of it's about as well, really. I'm
glad to hear that you're having good results there. That sounds wonderful. Yeah, the only thing I would disagree on, dear, is about the suppositories. That talk is all over the place about if you take suppositories, you don't get high. That's not exactly correct. I've used suppositories myself, and believe me, you can get high on them if you have too much of them.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, it's not. I never said that it's not correct, because I have had people that I have worked with that have felt anxious still when they've been using the suppositories. It just reduces that aspect of it. There's other things that can reduce that aspect of it as well. Citrulline works for some, but not for everybody. Ibuprofen works for some, but not for everybody. And same with black peppercorns as well. They can help with that aspect of it as well. It's about getting, I find it really good to actually get people to listen to their bodies and to learn what their bodies are saying to them, because we seem to have lost touch with that a lot over the generations, I think, listening to our own bodies. And that's how come a lot of people end up ill in the first place. They ignore the warning signs, so it's good to get people back to basics, really.
Well, I'd like to see, to me, I always like to get the oil as close to the problem as I can. So if somebody has, like, prostate cancer or bowel cancer, I like the idea of using suppositories, because then the cannabinoids go directly into the bloodstream, bypassing the liver. But if you're treating, stomach cancer or anything of that nature, or liver cancer, well, then it's best to take it by mouth, and then it goes through the liver, and throughout the rest of your body. So it's really, this is all in its infancy right now, and I know for a fact that we can bring these oils up to much higher healing levels. As a matter of fact, I just put out a bunch of new information on my website, phoenixtears.ca. I talk about these super oils that can be produced, and these oils are unbelievably powerful. They can really get you high, but they can really get you healed too. So all of the, what I discovered is all there. The information is there, and it tells everyone how, that they could produce these oils, these amazing healing oils themselves. And when I say that these oils are strong, it's like the oils that I've showed the world how to produce with the rice cookers and things of that nature. These are very powerful oils, and they've saved the lives of a great number of people now. But these, if you go through this simple process that I'm describing, these oils, I would say, are 3 to 4 times, maybe even 5 times stronger than the best oils. It's just amazing, the difference. So I think that's a piece of information that maybe a few people will be able to use.
Yeah, even if you use it as a suppository, it still does go through the liver eventually, just not as fast as when you use it by the stomach. But you also lose quite a lot of the bioavailability of the oil when you use it through the stomach. It's 70%, something like that, more bioavailable by using it via suppository. So a mixture of the two, I always kind of recommend. I think is a great idea. And what is these super oils, Rick? I'm really fascinated to know what a super oil is. Is it an oil that's been decarboxylated on a hot plate or extracted by a CO2 unit?
Well, it's more than that. You see, years ago, I bought one of those small glass top vaporizers. And see, I was producing these high quality oils, so I was vaporizing all of these different oils in this vaporizer. And in a short time, a month or two, then all of a sudden the bottle itself got all golden colored, and then these droplets started to form and run down the inside. So I decided one day, I'd cleaned out pipes and hash pipes and things like that in the past, but the resins were all burned. They were no good. So I just took a little bit of alcohol and I put it in this glass bottle from the vaporizer, and I just washed it, this golden substance, off the sides of it with my fingers. And I walked to the door and I was going to throw it out. And then it just struck me. I said, this hasn't really been burned. It's been vaporized. So I just went back and I put it, I took a small stainless steel measuring cup and I poured the alcohol and this oil into it. And I evaporated the alcohol off. And that oil that came out the other end, it was just mind-boggling. It was amber perfectly. You could see right through it. It had a bit of a reddish tinge to it. But this stuff was so powerful, it was just beyond belief. And I went in and I treated I had a skin cancer patient under treatment at the time. And normally when you put this oil on a skin cancer, sometimes the people will feel these little tugging sensations. And, because that's the oil. The oil is drawing the cancer cells to it. It's killing the cancer cells, and that tugging you're feeling is actually the healing. So I had this gentleman under treatment with the other style oils, the old style oils. So I tried this new oil on him. And he told me, he said, about an hour after he put that oil on, he said it was just like somebody had his face with a pair of pliers. He said the tugging was so severe. He said it was just amazing. So as soon as he told me that, it told me right there, because it's killing the cancer cells that much quicker. So these oils are in the end, these vaporized oils that you collect from the inside of a vaporizer, because they're the pure cannabinoids. There's no contaminants at all. Anything that's not anything that you don't want is left behind in the bowl of the vaporizer. Plant waxes and things of that nature. So you're collecting the cannabinoids in their purest form, and I think that this is a wonderful argument because in the future, this is what they're going to try to say. Like the pharmaceutical industry can produce it so much purer than anyone else. Well, with a small piece of equipment like this, you can produce oils that are as pure as you can make them, and no pharmaceutical company can make them purer. So I think this is really the future of this medicine.
So in effect, Rick, what you're saying there is it's really double distilling the oil. Would that be right?
Basically, that's what you're doing. A vaporizer only heats it heats the oil up to like 400 degrees Fahrenheit, and by the time you've reached that temperature, all the cannabinoids have vaporized off. But there's something I tried to talk to experts about this, and they just kind of went in one ear and out the other. But there's like decarboxylation. I was told by Dr. Paul Hornby that process I showed the public with the use of the rice cooker, it achieved perfect decarboxylation, according to Dr. Paul Hornby, and he's a well-known expert in this field. But this extra heating process that takes place in a vaporizer is doing something else. And as yet, I really can't explain it, but it's making these oils so powerful that it's just beyond belief.
Wow.
So, and the other beauty of this is, too, you can produce these oils with no solvents at all. If you have a good cannabis crop, you dry it out well, and if you get a resin collector and collect the resins from the bud material, and then wash these resins in fresh water because the plant material will float in the water, and the resins all sink. So you just wash it in fresh water in a jar or something until the water, you keep changing the water until the water stays clear. And by that point, you've taken all the plant material out of the resins. Then you just take the resins, dry them, and then just put them in the bowl of the vaporizer and vaporize them off and let the inside of the dome of the vaporizer, let them collect on that dome, and there you have the strongest oils on the planet.
How big is this vaporizer then, like, if you're going to do
half
a kilo at a time?
Well, I'm actually planning on building 3 different machines, I hope, in the near future. I'm looking at building a distilling device, I'm looking at building a resin collector, and a vaporizer. Now, this vaporizer will be airtight, so you don't want to be losing the cannabinoids, so it has to be airtight. And I'm looking at a dome probably about a foot across. But that's, for more small-scale production. But if you're going to produce these oils on a large scale, you would need to upsize this equipment. But I think it's really the future here, and it takes all of those arguments away, about solvents. Like they always were going on about solvent residues in the oil. Well, I mean, I've been eating this oil myself since 2001, and I provided the oil to thousands of patients with who experienced no problems at all. I mean, that simple little thing I do with the water, I always showed them, as the solvent oil mix is boiling down, and it's down to about, on the final boil, it's down to just a couple inches left in the rice cooker. Add a few drops of water. And what that does, you see, it washes, all of these drops of water, they break into tiny particles, and they go throughout the oil solvent mix. And water has a higher boiling temperature than the solvent, so obviously the solvent comes off first, and then what happens then is these tiny particles of water, they start turning into steam, and they come up through the oil. And if you see this in a rice cooker, when it's coming off, it looks towards the end of the process, it looks like there's like smoke coming off the rice cooker. And as soon as you see it, if you sniff it, there's a strong chemical smell. But after about 30 seconds or 45 seconds, what it's doing, you see, it's washing, like I said, the steam is actually washing the oil. As these droplets turn into steam, they wash the oil of the solvent residues. So after a few seconds, the next time you smell the steam, it's really just steam. So it cleanses these oils, so I think, the oil is so anti-poisonous in reality that even if there was a small amount of residue from the solvent left, the oil would neutralize its effects, because this is about the most anti-poisonous substance on this planet.
Hi, Rick. Can I just ask you something quickly? Have you had this super oil tested?
No, I never had the opportunity.
Okay.
Right. Can I ask Becky? She's probably sitting behind you, is she, Sarah?
Yes. No, she's sitting next to me.
Next to you. Hi, Becky.
Hi, you all right?
Quick question for you, Becky. Do you think the laws is going to change anytime soon on cannabis? Seeing you are an activist in England.
I would hope so. I think that the proof that's coming out now, the evidence that we've collected, that the various campaigns have collected, the evidence from, I think it was Norman Baker, collecting evidence from different countries to see what worked and what didn't, and came back and said, criminalisation has no effect on prohibition and rates of use. And then, I remember a Leap speaker saying, if kind of, if punitive sanctions for using drugs works, well, why are they beheading people every week in Saudi Arabia, So I'm kind of quite hopeful that we are opening up a debate. The UNODC had a document leaked by Richard Branson the other day stating that, all drugs should be decriminalised as soon as possible. And we do have UNGAS next year, which will be, the UN debating this. So I think it's possibly going to happen sooner rather than later. I really do. Hopefully, anyway.
Yeah, I think you're right, actually. I really do think... I hope you're right, Becky. I hope you're right. We have a lady with us today.
A matter of time before they'll stop making it legal, because too many people are getting onto it.
Just come back to your mic a little bit, Yvonne.
Sorry, I was just saying it's only a matter of time before it becomes legal, because too many people are getting onto it.
Well, this is what I have to laugh about now. You look, I think, there's 23 states now in the U.S. that's legalized, and even Washington, D.C., they've legalized the medicinal use and the recreational use. Country after country are legalizing the medicinal use of cannabis, but these governments are not saying why. And the reason is it's the healing power of these extracts. That's the reason all this legalization is taking place, and the pharmaceutical industry is trying to get their foot in the door. So I don't believe the pharmaceutical industry has any place in this medicine. This medicine belongs to the people. It doesn't belong to any government, and it doesn't belong to any pharmaceutical company.
Well said,
I believe for a long time that the pharmaceutical knows about the healing properties of cannabis, hence it's still being illegal.
Oh, I'm convinced. I've said many occasions that I feel that the pharmaceutical industry has probably known how to cure cancer for about 150 years. Because all of those companies, Eli Lilly, Park Davis, Squibb, back in the 1800s and early 1900s, they supplied hemp-based medicines for decades. You know, hemp was a major ingredient in so many of their medications. So how could they use this plant for all that length of time and not see its healing powers?
Yeah, Becky wants to say something quickly. Go on, Becky.
I do have to clarify one point that you made there, Rick. In 23 states in America haven't actually legalised cannabis. They've regulated its medical use subject to a certificate from a doctor. I think it's 3 or 4 states in America that have regulated both medical and recreational. But I think we need to be very clear on that fact.
Yes, well, I mean, what we need, we don't need regulations. We need total repeal of these laws worldwide. You know, set the cannabis plant free and we set humanity free. This is the road we have to take. Governments right now are trying to keep their friends, you know, they want their friends in the pharmaceutical industry to produce, you know, these extracts. But you know, the poor people can't afford to play these pharmaceutical games any longer. You know, if they get their hands on this, they're going to want a fortune for it. And I doubt very much if they'd ever supply, you know, the highest quality oils, because there would be very little return business, and this is what these companies are all about. So what's happening right now? Governments are trying to control this, and they still seem to think they have the right to do this, but in reality, what they're committing is a crime against humanity. And in the end, so many of the poorer people will just simply go out, grow the plants themselves, and produce their own medicines. And in a short time from now, I think you'll see that the cannabis plant is completely free. And we know it's not just the medicine. We need this plant to save the world.
Yeah.
You know, it puts an end to starvation. It can give us a supply our energy needs. Over 50,000 different things can be produced from this wonderful plant.
Can I just say something there, Rick?
Everything in our day-to-day lives can be produced from hemp.
Can I just say something, Rick?
Why are we using up all of these resources? It's insanity what's going on.
Can I just get in there and just say something, Rick? Tony Hulse puts a very poignant statement in the box here. He says, legalising is not making it free for all of us. It's another scam until people are free to grow and use as they choose. The battle goes on.
They're right. That's exactly
Absolutely,
right. Legalization is not the answer. We need these laws repealed everywhere, and every government should be doing that right at this very moment.
Yeah, I agree totally with that as well. You know, I think that this plant should be, I know that this plant should be available to everyone, whether it's children, adults, or anyone really, you know. Legalisation is just another word for control of the plant, you know, and regulation is obviously just another word for control of the plant. And governments like the UK government recognises cannabis as a medicine on one hand, because it actually allows for the prescription of full extract plant on the NHS in the UK and in other countries like Israel, the Netherlands, Spain, you know. But at the end of the day, in the UK, if you want to get cannabis on from the NHS, the chances are you won't get it because it's so expensive. And this is one of the things that is worrying about legislation and regulation, is that these companies like DW Pharmaceuticals, which is actually allowed to grow fields and fields of cannabis in a secret location in Kent. And it's allowed to sell exactly the same substance as what I could grow and produce myself. But if I get caught growing and producing exactly the same substance as GW Pharmaceuticals, I can be arrested. And I could be arrested for drug dealing as well, whereas GW Pharmaceuticals gets paid for doing exactly the same thing.
Well, another valid point, sorry, Becky, put in there.
I'm Sarah.
Oh, Sarah, sorry, I didn't know it was Becky or Sarah. It's just the one picture I'm looking at. Sorry about that, Sarah. But I would rather buy a bit of cannabis off a guy that I knew than go to a pharmacist to buy a bit of cannabis, if you know what I mean, because at least I know what I'm getting. You know?
Well, brother, I mean, if we set this plant free like we should, what would a pound of cannabis be worth? It's only these damn government regulations that are causing these high prices. That's what's causing the black market. I mean, cannabis is a farm crop. We grew it for thousands of years. You know, if you grew it as a farm crop, you could buy a kilo of high-grade hemp bud for $10.
The thing is with DW Pharmaceuticals, Sativa. So one of the things is, I've got to say though, Martin, is that you are actually guaranteed to have the same standardised substance every single time. You know, that's one of the reasons why you do pay for that price. They do test test their cannabis. Whereas if you got it from somebody down the road, they might, they'd be able to produce a similar sort of thing, but it probably wouldn't necessarily be the same each time. They've got a lot more money to spend on growing their crops, making sure that every single thing is exactly the same, and they have to check that it's standardized. It's
I think as well.
Yeah, but it's a high-priced joke, is what it is.
Yeah,
I mean, a man came to me in Canada years ago. He was using Sativex, and he put the little jar on the table, and he told me, he said it cost me over $1,200 a month to supply myself with these little spray things of Sativex. I gave him a couple tubes of oil. He came back 2 weeks later. I said, "How'd you make out with the oil?" He said, "Rick," he said, "I threw the Sativex in the trash."
Exactly. Exactly. Because it's a tincture, and tinctures have their place. A lot of people use them for pain. A lot of people use them for all sorts, and they have got their place within the medicinal healing and the medicine world. But Becky wants to say something as well, yeah?
I do have to say though that one of the things, I mean, I can understand where people are coming from, and they're saying, legalisation is another form of control. And regulation is an issue as well. I have two things to say. Unfortunately, we do kind of live under governments, and if we legalise, we call the dogs off, and that is kind of, the best thing to do. People will no longer get to deal with the rest later. I also think that with regulation, I understand you think it's a bad idea, and I understand, about going to your friend for weed, but with regulation comes standards, and with standards come, no mould. We don't want mould, we don't want insects, we want people growing.
I agree, dear. I mean, we do need standardization, and I mean, people that are supplying this on a large scale to others, it should be a standardized, formula. There's no question. But I truly believe that we all should have the right. If we choose to grow these plants and make our own medicine, I feel that we should all have the right to do that.
I feel like you should let Becky finish.
Well, I actually would like to finish, saying what I was, mid-word. I think basically what I'm trying to say is that, under groups like UKCSC, what we're looking at is we're looking at not-for-profit grows, we're looking at people making sure their grow areas are clean, making sure that the cannabis that they produce is to a standard, monitoring the nutrients that people use. And I have to say, seriously, in terms of providing medicine to people, we need this standardisation, we really do. And if that comes with regulation, I'm fine with that. I think that's a good thing. It evens it all out.
Well, as I said, I have no problem with regulating, growers that are doing this on a big scale and supplying it to the public, because there's a good number of people that are not in the circumstances to grow their own. So they'll obviously buy this. But again, this plant belongs to the human race. It doesn't belong to anyone else. So, I think we all should demand our natural right to grow and use this plant if that's what we choose to do.
We have a bit of division in the chat box here, guys.
They also have patents out on cannabis now, and that is so the corporations can control it more. And I think once the corporations start controlling it, then you'll get more the likes of GMO crops and that.
Yeah, but that's really up to the people. If we allow this to take place, I mean, the people are the power in any country. If we unite and with one voice, we tell our governments, we've had enough of this nonsense, and it will no longer be tolerated. The governments respond. I mean, I attended Expo Weed in Chile last November. A big event, about 30,000 people attended, and but they had a march in Chile a few months before. And over 200,000 people were marching through the streets of Santiago, Chile, demanding legalization. And, of course, you didn't hear about this on the mainstream media because that's all controlled by the big money. But the government of Chile allowed a foundation called Foundation Daya to grow a big medicinal crop right in the city of Santiago. So, if they can do this in Chile, I think it's a good example that what the rest of us can do elsewhere. Let's just get up and make a noise about this. Governments are supposed to be working for us. Why are we paying these people these big salaries? They're supposed to be representing us and protecting us. Now, it's just about time they started doing their jobs.
We've tested a lot of our oils that we use, and it's vitally important to be able to do that. That's part of the research that is being carried out by us at the moment, because we work on a medical level, Mm-hmm. And that sort of standard and that sort of level is a luxury, and it's very good that we can have in Spain and I understand in England. it's not very easy for people to be able to test their oil. You know, well, there is obviously ways, you know, and there are ways that you can get your oil tested if you really want to and do a bit of digging round, and that you can get this done, you know. And so, yeah, when Beccy was saying about medical, you know, she was really talking about people that supply, and that should be a voluntary thing, really. You know, if you are going to be supplying medicine for people, then you really do need to know what you're supplying. And when you use CO2 extraction as well, that kills any mold, and that kills a lot of the bacteria and funguses that can grow in the cannabis. So that's probably the best form of extraction that we have at this present moment available for medical users, really. You know, we've worked really hard on developing a medical protocol to make sure that we can offer people the best treatment. And because cannabis really is a treatment, you know, we can't really say that it gets rid of the cause of cancer, because you have to keep taking it as a maintenance dose. And as a maintenance dose, and the fact that you have to carry on taking it means that it's a treatment. And it's vitally important, I do feel, that people do realise that cannabis is a treatment, because otherwise they think that a lot of people do stop and they don't carry on with the main dose. So these sort of like little plays in words, I feel, can be quite important for people to know the clear guidelines about what's what. And I've been looking a lot into minerals as well with cannabis oil, because cannabis doesn't actually put minerals back into your system. And a lot of people are also saying that if you can get the mineral levels right as well, you actually need less cannabis oil. You know, and that's another thing that we're looking at, ways of reducing the amount of cannabis oil that you actually need, and to actually try and find out what these causes are of these diseases and these illnesses. You know, a lot of people say they can be started by traumas, or they can be started by a shock originally. You know, there's a lot of evidence coming up in that sort of aspect, and a lot of research is going, like I said, into mineral levels as well with cancers and other diseases. You know, arthritis, they say, can be due to copper toxicity. You know, very similar symptoms to arthritis. So it's fascinating, really, what we're learning and all the information and everything that we're gaining, and we're actually looking at it from a proper scientific sort of stance, really. And we've been getting some great information, and we've been treating all sorts of different people, from motor neuron disease to cancer to arthritis, bullet wounds, you know, psoriasis. You know, been getting some great results. It's been a fascinating journey, and things are getting, like I said.
My God, yeah. Somebody fell down the toilet.
Yeah, it sounded like he's going to the toilet.
Yes, I did. I have an iPad.
I'd just like to say, guys, this is for Beccy, more or less, I think, that the chat box here is probably divided over regulation. And who's going to do the regulation, Beccy?
Sorry?
The chat box here I'm looking at was divided there when you were talking about this has to be regulated and such. Who is going to be doing the regulation?
Well, I don't necessarily think it has to be the government. I mean, if you take campaigns such as United Kingdom Cannabis Social Clubs, they are looking at regulating and standardising, you know, supply. So it doesn't necessarily have to be the government. What I'm saying is that we need some form of knowledge about when somebody buys some oil, that it's been produced in a clean area, that it's been produced by people who know what they're doing. Hopefully, you know, a lot of people, and I kind of agree, you know, it should maybe be grown organically. And it should also be tested, because how on earth do people know what they're taking? I mean, if you're making oil, surely you should be able to say to your service user or patient, this is the cannabinoid profile of what you're taking, and due to research, we know that this is, you know, possibly the best thing for your cancer. And I don't think we have that at the moment. I really don't. And
also, you've got to look into the fact that different cannabinoids help with different conditions. You know, you've got some that are anti-inflammatory, some that are stop you from feeling sick, some that will increase appetite, some that will reduce the appetite. So depending on what you've got, you can actually profile a strain. If you can test your cannabis, you can profile a strain for specific illnesses. But like I said, it is always down to the individual. It's not down to the cancer, it's not down to the condition, it's often down to the individual and finding what suits that individual, really. And if you can test, you can see better what is working for different people, you know. And it's all about gathering information, it's all about gaining more and more knowledge of this plant and recording it, and so then you can share it and you can produce facts then. Now, it's all very well blindly treating people with, and hoping that you're going to get the right results, but to actually know 100% what you've given them, what's working and what's not working, is obviously, it's a much better way forward when it comes to medicine, surely.
What do you say to that, Rick?
Oh, I completely agree. I mean, some forms of these extracts, like an extract that I may like the effects of, other people might not. It's really a personal thing, and I think many different varieties of oils, as long as you know it has the right healing effects for these illnesses, then I think many different varieties of these oils should be made available so people can test them, and then to take the ones that they enjoy the effects from. This is, it's like I said, like today, there's so much damage, I think, being done by the pharmaceutical industry, and they treat us all the same. Like if you and I have the same illnesses exactly, we go to the same doctor, and he puts us on the same medications, that doctor really has no idea what effect these medications are going to have on you or me, because we're all chemically different. So they're just using us like guinea pigs, and it's just a money-making game is all it is. Cannabis is real medicine. This allopathic approach to medicine, as far as I'm concerned, is nothing more than insanity. And I think we should put a stop to it and get back to the old empirical medicine from plants. That's where you'll find the healing.
I do have to say something here, because I actually use allopathic medicine. I have a mental health problem and I take antipsychotics every day, and they work very well. Thanks to cannabis oil, I've managed to halve the amount of antipsychotics I take, but I think at this stage I do have to say that a combination of the two is working incredibly well for me. I did make the mistake once of stopping taking antipsychotics and just going on to cannabis, and I think when you're looking at mental health, you can't necessarily take the same. I think it would be difficult to generalise to mental health the same way as you would physical health, to be honest.
Well, again, a different strain of the oil, a different variety of oil could make all the difference in the world. I mean, this is what people don't understand. They look at cannabis as being just one thing. But all of these different varieties of cannabis, they all have their own healing values. And they vary a great deal from strain to strain. So, this is where, we've got to get a stable seed supply that people know that when they're sending, for a certain variety, they know it's effective for the treatment of their condition. But right now, everything is just in a shambles, and everybody seems to be in a mad rush to fill their pockets. And here in Europe, there's an awful lot of people that have been sold sativa oils, which have the wrong effect. I mean, it might cure your cancer, but it also might put you in a psych ward somewhere, because the sativas, they just don't have the right effect for internal use. And, you see this all over the place now. It seems like they're producing these oils from anything they can get their hands on. So right now there's a real shortage of good indica strains available.
I think you've made the perfect case for regulation there, Rick, actually. I think that's something that would, be benefited by some form of regulation by somebody.
Can I just jump in there again?
We can't have people out there supplying the wrong oils. I mean, this has been going on. I mean, people all over the world now are using my name to sell their oils, and it horrifies me. I mean, I'm not involved with any of these people that supply oil. Some people, when I do events, people come up and have pictures taken with me. The next thing, they put the picture up on Facebook, and them and I, we're buddies, and they're supplying my oil. This is ridiculous.
That's a very good.
I'm not involved with any foundations or any drug companies or anything of that nature. So if you see anybody saying they're supplying the Rick Simpson oil, well, you can be sure of one thing: I'm not the one making it. So God knows what you're buying. Just
to jump on that one thing, right? I'm sitting here at home, right, and I'm listening to this show and I'm saying, right, I want some of this oil. Where do I buy this oil?
Well, I always tell people to make their own. That's the safest way. I mean, if you go to my website, phoenixtears.ca, all of the instructions are there, how to produce the oil, the dosage instructions, everything is there that you need. But, what I'm trying to do is get people to become more self-sufficient. Take care of your own needs. Become your own doctor. And this is what happens when you get on these extracts and you start producing them. That's what you become. And this is part of the reason the medical system, I think, is so afraid of this also, because many doctors will be put out of work. Because for things like infections and all of these, day-to-day things that we encounter, well, we can treat ourselves at home if we have the oil. So, there's a lot of resistance against the use of this, but it's like I said, it's a natural human right. First to use these medicines. are these plants as medicines. It says right in the Christian Bible that we have this, that as humans we have this right. So who are these people that think they have the right to stop us? You know, it's all based on corruption and lies, and this all has to come to an end because, you know, we're at a very serious juncture right now in human history. You know, our planet is becoming more and more toxic every day, and I think, you know, within the next 15, 20 years, we could wind up going extinct, you know, because we're just not designed to live in this type of environment. So we need to detoxify the earth, and you know, the human race has to begin to start being more self-sufficient, and they have to start thinking rationally. You know, they like to say, you know, like people like me, well, we're just conspiracy theorists. Well, if anybody can't see the conspiracy that's against us, you know, it really is the big money that stands in the background that controls our governments. They're the ones that are running this show, and they're the ones that are causing the human race all this grief. So I think it's just about time that, you know, that we grew up as a species and realized this fact.
Yeah.
There is places that you can sort of go and get reliable sources of cannabis oil, but unfortunately in countries like Ireland and England it's not really possible. That's why we work from Spain. We're also on the grow your own kind of stage, but we also realise that a lot of people, when they are diagnosed with an illness such as cancer, sometimes it's quite late, and often because of the stance of where cannabis is, it's often one of the last things people turn to, so sometimes they haven't got very much time left, and that's where places like Compassion Club step in and actually assist people until they are in the position to be able to stand on their own 2 feet. You know, and we offer a lot of guidance and a lot of advice on how to stand on your own 2 feet, and a lot of support, because as you can imagine, a lot of people are very, very scared to take those first steps at providing for themselves. You know, and a lot of people are looking for help. So yeah, there are reputable people out there that are willing to help and that can help and that do use oil which has been tested. Things that you can do to support your body along the way as well, which I do think, you know, a little bit of help and support just seems to work really well for people. The cannabis oil, like I said, doesn't put minerals back into the body. You know, no matter how much cannabis oil you're going to eat, it's not going to replace your missing magnesium, you know. So, you know, there's lots of different angles that we like to look at it. We're on about whole body healing here, not just sort of partial body healing.
Yeah. What I'm getting at here.
You could eat the seeds, and they're very nutritional. You know, it's not just the oil you can get from the plant. You can use the plant, the seeds, as a source of food.
Yeah, the seeds, the hemp seeds. You know, you're on about the hemp seeds. The hemp is very different from cannabis. You know, hemp oil is different from cannabis oil. Cannabis oil is made from the cannabis sativa or the cannabis indica. The hemp oil is really made of cannabis ruderalis. You know, there's quite a big distinction there, and people do get confused. I've heard of people going into shops and buying hemp seed oil. You know,
that's body seed.
The clarification made clear. It's better if we all speak the same language.
Yeah, I had a lot of complaints about that in the beginning because I always use the term hemp oil because that's what farmers called this crop all through history. But the hemp seed oil producers, you see on the front of their label it says hemp oil, but when you read the back of the label it says cold-pressed hemp seed oil. So they're mislabeling their product. If they would simply put hemp seed oil on the front, that would solve all of this problem. And I'm a big supporter of hemp seed oil myself because it's good for cardiovascular, it's a wonderful food supply. You know, it certainly does have its uses, but it does not contain the healing cannabinoids that the extracts from the cannabis plant can provide.
Yeah, what I was going to say there, I think what Sarah is doing with the oil is she's not just saying, right, you have this illness, blah blah blah, there's the oil. You were looking at all the different aspects of it, Sarah, or right there, about the illness and what this person is coming in with, so to speak.
Yeah, well, yeah. For example, I've had somebody come in with motor neuron disease, and the cannabis oil has been helping them dramatically. But I've also researched into what vitamins and supplements and things like that can actually help. And I can hear Rick rustling. Rick, can you mute up, please, mate? Cheers. And then like, so, you know, there's extra support that you can give to help stop the degradation of the myelin sheath. That's, you know, so there's lots of things. I think if somebody's really, really ill, the more help and support and building blocks you can give that person, the better, you know. And minerals are building blocks. Amino acids are building blocks. Enzymes are building blocks. All proteins are building blocks. All of these things are necessary for the body to function in a healthy and productive manner instead of bodging it. You know, if it hasn't got these building blocks, your body is basically bodging it. You know, when you haven't got the right tools to fix the job, you can use something else, but it won't be as good. You know, and that's what your body is having to do unless it has the right ingredients. And a lot of people are really short on magnesium. Not everybody. I had too much, but, you know, and the magnesium is responsible for over 300 processes within the body. You know, and cannabis oil is not going to put that back in your body. So that's why I like to work on lots of different angles, and I'm been having some great results from working on lots of different angles, you know.
Well, listen, Sarah, sorry, I really have to cut across you. We're running out of time here.
No
and
worries.
Again, I have to thank you guys for coming on. I'm just going to say one word, and it's wow. That's all I'm going to say. We have to do this again. Because 2 hours...
Anytime you want, brother.
2 hours is definitely not long enough for this subject. Definitely not. So I'd like to thank Sarah and Becky. I'd like to thank Yvonne. And I'd like to thank you, Rick, as well, for coming on. And great knowledge from all you guys. It was absolutely brilliant. I enjoyed every minute of it. The chat didn't move. We had great bliss. People in the chat. Unbelievable. Just wow. That's all I'm going to say. But yes, if you guys are up for it, we'll have to do a part 2. Definitely.
Yep, brilliant.
Oh, yes, no problem at all, brother.
So, without further ado, guys, I'm going to leave you. As I said, time has caught up with us. It catches up with me every week. 2 hours, it flies by, especially on a subject like this. I'd like to thank you all in the chat room for staying with the show. I'd like to thank you all you guys for listening. And as ever, as I leave you every week with the same tune, why should I make it different this week? Because it is all about one thing, guys. At the end of the day, it is all just about one thing. And it's all about this. Good night, guys.